We have some callers on the line. You want to ready to go to work and answer a few questions?
Always.
See what's on their minds tonight. Let's go out to California to see what's happening there. Ben, you are up first on RFD-TV. Thanks for calling, Ben.
Hi.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Your question.
AGROTAIN. We put it on corn or sugar beets. It'll stabilize the nitrate. Is that right?
Ben, I'll answer that question. Any nitrogen-loving crop, you can add AGROTAIN technology in your program to help manage the nitrogen losses that can occur. So, depending on what you're using in sugar beets, obviously I know about corn, but in sugar beets you could also get a value out of that.
Brings up a point that we talked a lot about corn here so far, but maybe talk about it's not exclusive to corn by any means, Martin.
No, like I was mentioning to Ben, AGROTAIN will help you in your nitrogen program, either with liquid nitrogen or granular dry urea nitrogen. Anywhere that you're using those, you can add our technology into your program very easily, and it will be a benefit to you most likely.
We're talking to our friends, of course, from AGROTAIN, and AGROTAIN Live here, all about nitrogen efficiency and improving yields, and doing that with all the erratic weather we have seen around the country. We started in California. Let's come a little bit east to Colorado here for our next caller. John, you're up next. Welcome.
Thank you. Earlier in the program, the doctor talked about chip fill in corn. I thought he basically said it's because of lack of nitrogen. Can it be genetics? Can it be other factors, or is it normally based on nitrogen?
Well, John, it's a combination of factors. But when you look at how the plant, a corn plant in particular, goes through and sets its yield, and we'll go back to just before tasseling when that ear is pretty well lengthened out, and then we go through a pollination stage, we actually could have some yield loss due to high temperature stress during pollination, but typically you see that in scattered kernels on the ear, not just the tip. And what happens when you start seeing nitrogen reduction is the plant makes a decision. It's going to fill ears or kernels from the bottom of the ear upward, and when it begins to run out of a resource, and that could either be sugar or it could be nitrogen. And that's why we talk about leaf greenness being so critical, because what it helps it do is maintain that factory long enough to fill those upper kernels of the ear. And so typically what happens is that nitrogen is the #1 culprit that causes yield loss in that upper part of the ear, and that's why we tend to look at it from that standpoint. But there can be another number of other factors as well.
Weather, drought, heat.
Weather, drought, heat, being the other ones, but nitrogen, like I said, is the #1 culprit that causes that problem.
All right, thanks for that call. Let's go on to, we're going across the country from west to east. Let's go to Kentucky for our next call. Tom, you're up on RFD-TV. Thanks for calling, Tom.
Good evening. A question for your panel in regards to their product in urea, using on forage grasses like Timothy and orchard grass. Would it help prolong the use of the urea with those crops?
Well, in an answer, it's going to help prolong the nitrogen, because when you're applying urea to forage crops, you can incorporate, and so you're putting your urea, as you spread it out there, depending upon the moisture, in about as a difficult spot for urea to be in for the most potential nitrogen loss. So adding AGROTAIN to that when you apply it probably doesn't make it last longer. It's just that you lose less of it by the time you can lose a lot before it can get rained into the soil and be protected.
Very good. Let's move on to Louisiana for our next call. Randy, we're glad you called, and you're up next. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Our main fold is ryegrass for cattle, and our temperatures go from 65 degrees or 50 up to 80. So how much would this help us with this chemical?
Well, I'm glad to speak to that one as well. The loss is exaggerated when the higher the temperatures go, but what we've discovered in a lot of our research is that anytime you have moisture available when the urea is out there in ryegrass or any other kind of crop, you know, if you have moisture, you're going to have more volatility from 30 degrees all the way up to 80 degrees. But if you're having moisture and urea together in a field like rye, when it's 80 degrees, is going to be much more severe than at 30 degrees. But in both cases, you can have a lot of volatility loss. So AGROTAIN would really benefit you from a risk management standpoint on your urea in that ryegrass situation.
I'd like to echo
Please.
what Martin has said on that, and that's a fact that as we think about the whole process of volatilization, it is a direct function of temperature. And so the warmer it gets, the faster things volatilize. And so anything that we can do to protect that nitrogen from basically, you think about the evaporation process, that's really what volatilization is. It just really, as we increase the temperature, the faster that process goes. So if we can stabilize that nitrogen, it's going to remain on the surface. And then once every day goes by that we keep it there, the greater chance that the rain, particularly in grass systems, will wash it in or incorporate it into the soil.